first of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming out here tonight. You could be anywhere in the world. We're happy that you're here with us tonight. We have an excellent fireside chat here with a core contributor and founding team member, Mr. Christian Hasker. So please give it up for yourselves and give it up for Christian tonight. Yes.
This is the first meetup I've done since pandemic.
Is this anyone else's first meetup pre-pandemic? Thank you all. You're braving, the big bad world once again, and it's good to be here with you all. So let's start off. Christian, I'd like to know just how you got your start in distributed ledger technologies and what helped you make the jump into this brave new world that we're all kind of, becoming more and more familiar with.
Yes, so thank you also for coming. I got into distributed ledger technology in late 2017, the height of the ICO bubble, probably like a lot of other folks. But my journey to crypto was not necessarily because I was super attracted by crypto. I was really drawn to the technology. So I had been working at a distributed database company. So this company called DataStax, which commercializes Apache Cassandra, which is this massively scalable open source database, powers a lot of enterprises today. I was talking to someone who, you were at Netflix, right? Netflix runs on Cassandra. So I was like, yeah, who was from Netflix?
Right here.
Yeah. So distributed databases, distributed ledger technology is like an evolution of that. And after I left DataStax, I set up my own consulting company. I helped a lot of other open source companies bring their technology to market, productize it, be their initial marketing team. And so someone I'd worked with was working on Hashgraph. And the inventor of Hashgraph and his business partner were in the early stages of thinking about how to do a public ledger with Hashgraph. And they needed messaging and positioning and bringing that to market. So I was just going to be in and out. I was going to come in, help them for 3 months, launch Hedera. It wasn't even called Hedera then. Launch Hedera and then be out. And here I am 4.5 years later, still in. Because once you go down the rabbit hole, I mean, whatever flavor of blockchain you're in, whatever flavor of Web3 you're in, we all know, I think, that it has this incredible potential to change the way that we interact, socialize, do commerce, and we're early. So anyway, that's my story.
Appreciate that. And I guess we can also just keep it rolling. In terms of the open source, I'd like to know why that's a guiding philosophy for you, or why that's something that you've stuck with throughout your career, and why it's important to the general ecosystem as well.
Yeah, I think when it comes to developer adoption, open source is really key. And it's been one of the things that in the early days of Hashgraph, it was not open source. It was something called open review, where developers can take the code, compile the code, but not do anything with the code. And recently, late last year, the governing council voted to acquire the intellectual property rights to the Hashgraph consensus algorithm and open source it. And it just means, there are no barriers now. Whatever you want to do with it, if that's your bag, if you want to contribute, if you want to use it in your application. So it just makes developer adoption just so much more frictionless. And I think open technologies win over closed technologies.
Amazing. And Hedera is at layer 1, but Hedera also has 2 unique aspects that differentiate it from other networks. Let's dive into Hedera. We'll change the subject now. It's the governance and the underlying technology. Could you discuss how Hedera is different from a blockchain and other distributed ledger technologies?
Yeah, definitely. So Hedera is not a blockchain, as you said. It is built on the Hashgraph consensus algorithm. So kind of a weird thing to think about is if Bitcoin did not exist, most of this market would not exist, but Hedera would still exist because Dr. Lehman Baird, who's the inventor of Hashgraph consensus algorithm, is, you know how you throw away around the term genius like loosey-goosey? Lehman is a genius. I mean, truly a genius. Like his brain capacity just goes beyond anything I've ever seen before. And back in 2012, maybe it even predated this, but he wanted to solve an incredibly hard math problem. And that math problem is, how can computers come to consensus in a distributed network? How can they come to consensus with maximum security and high throughput? And he worked on it, and he convinced himself that it is impossible, it cannot be done, and he kept coming back to it. And in 2015, he invented this algorithm called the Hashgraph consensus algorithm. And it works in a way that ensures that you have this property of security, which is asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance, and also incredible speed. And how he achieved that is through something called virtual voting. So all of the nodes in the network gossip these little messages to one another, and he added 2 little hashes to the messages so that every node in the network very rapidly knows what every other node in the network knows, who they got that information from, and when they got it. So if you know everything, he was able to do this thing called virtual voting. If I know everything about you, I don't need to ask for your vote because I know how you would vote. So that is how Hashgraph works, and that is completely different from every other public ledger in the market. So Bitcoin, pioneered blockchain technology, right? The underlying blockchain, and most of what we see in the market is derivative of that. And Bitcoin is slow by design in order to have high security. So whenever you try to speed up a blockchain technology, you have to give up aspects of security, but you don't do that with Hashgraph. And then the other thing that you talked about is the governance model. So, most governance models out there are either there's some sort of benevolent dictator, there's a group of core developers, or there's community governance. And what the founders of Hedera thought was, how do we implement a public network that starts off relatively decentralized, but can become more and more decentralized over time? And they took this very long-term view. And they looked at Visa, actually, as a model. So there was this guy called D. Hock who put together the governance model for Visa when it was Bank Americard. And it was revolutionary at the time because he got these financial institutions that all compete with one another to actually govern Visa. And it's how Visa became Visa. So they borrowed a lot from that and sort of turbocharged it. It wasn't just financial institutions. They, or we are still, recruiting large organizations across different industries, across different geographies, and also each council member is term limited. So like in politics, if you stay in a system for too long, you could be corrupted. You could become like a bad actor over time. So governing council members will turn over every 6 years. And Chainlink Labs is one of the governing council members. In fact, our anchor Web3 representative, and hopefully there'll be more coming.
Yeah, we're certainly excited to be partners with you all at Hedera as well. So, to that point, and how Chainlink kind of, I guess, works into it. Hedera announced the mainnet launch of the EVM with smart contract compatibility. What does the deployment of smart contracts mean for your organization going forward?
Yeah, so there are 3 services on top of Hedera that developers can use and build upon. The first one that we launched is called the Hedera Consensus Service. So this amazing consensus algorithm, Hashgraph, gets exposed to developers, and you can build any application you want leveraging the consensus of the network. So if you want to do a supply chain system, for example, and you want to write data to the network and get that logged on the network, you do that via the consensus service. Then the second service we brought to market was something called the Hedera Token Service. So our native cryptocurrency, the thing that powers, every time you make an API call, you use this thing called HBAR, our cryptocurrency. It's incredibly fast and incredibly cheap to transact. And you can do, throttled on the network, 10,000 of those transactions per second. So we decided to make it possible for anyone to mint a token that inherits the properties of HBAR. So the security of A Byzantine fault tolerance, and also this incredible speed and low cost as well. And then the third, so we saw this explosion of different fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens on the network. But then you want full programmability as well. And so this year we launched our smart contract service, which is a Solidity-based smart contract service. It uses the Besu EVM, and the engineers have made it compatible with Hashgraph. So again, it is much faster than Solidity smart contracts on other platforms. We're doing about 300 to 400 transactions per second. Again, with this finality, so that's another thing. Blockchain technology, they have something called probabilistic finality. So as more blocks confirm your transaction, you become more sure that your transaction is confirmed. But with Hashgraph, you have deterministic finality. So there is a moment where you know for sure, and it happens within 3 to 5 seconds, that your transaction has been accepted by the network and consensus has happened on that transaction. So now these smart contracts also inherit that as well. So this opens up just a world of possibilities to use just the smart contract service with the Hedera token service. So let's say you want to mint an NFT. You can do that with the Hedera token service. But then let's say you want to program how that NFT is used. For example, let's say you want to make it where you have to win an auction in order to get that NFT. So you build your auction application in the smart contract, you'd mint your tokens on the Hedera token service, and now once you get your token, you get all of that transaction capability with this high throughput, low cost, without having to invoke the smart contract again. So it's just this incredibly powerful combination. So we're super excited. Chainlink is integrating currently with that service as well, which you haven't been able to do until now. And I think that's coming in Q3.
Yeah. We're very happy to support you guys in that effort. We have a long-term vision at Chainlink as well. In previous discussions, you've talked about Hedera as a 100-year company. Could you elaborate what you think it means to be a 100-year? In crypto in general, I have the attention span of a goldfish. So thinking 100 years, what does that look like for you? And how do you envision Hedera's place with it?
Yeah, well, I'll be dead, but that's okay.
Same.
So it doesn't mean that obviously 100 years the network goes down. Hopefully it'll go on beyond this. But you remember I talked about I was doing this consulting gig and then I am down the rabbit hole. So the thing that persuaded me to go full-time at Hedera was sitting with these founders and them talking about a 100-year vision. And I've worked in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, my whole tech career, 20 plus years. And what do you hear in Silicon Valley? What's your exit strategy, right? What's your 3 years, 5 years? Most VC funds are 10 years. So within 10 years, you're looking to get out in some way. And so all it means is when you have a 100-year vision, you are going to do the things that are going to keep you around for a long time. You're not going to do the things that are chasing the sugar high, which our industry is all about. Like you said, the attention of a goldfish. We're all chasing the sugar high, right? You have people that buy a cryptocurrency, and if it hasn't 10x'd within a week, it's the worst thing ever. So what is this? Shitcoin, So when you have that 100-year vision, it means you build the right technology components, which takes time. You set up the right node infrastructure, which takes time. You set up the right governance model, which takes time. And you take a different view of the regulatory environment. The regulations are going to catch up at some point, but government does not move quickly. So some of the critiques we've received about not maybe doing things that other networks are doing is absolutely by design. We have these governing council members with big brands. We want to preserve their brands. We don't want to do anything to put them at risk. And we can wait for regulations to become a little bit more certain as well, and different frameworks that emerge. And you're not just racing all the time. You're doing the right things that are going to keep you around for a long time.
And on the topic of the founding members, and you also brought up Dr. Lehman Bard. He's been working to solve the blockchain trilemma problem of performance, security, and decentralization. Tie it in together, like what does that, how does that half-crash consensus look like, and why is that important in those three security? We talked about it briefly, but if you want to dig in a little bit more.
So if you believe, as I do, that this technology is going to run the infrastructure for the whole world, whatever flavor of blockchain you're in, by the way, that you believe that it's going to disrupt the way that we work and play and transact, all of that, then you want to make sure that that infrastructure is the most solid foundation that you can build upon, right? So with other blockchain, when I talked about sacrificing security for speed, what that means is that people will live in a world where they are not resilient to real world attacks. So your network may be DDoSed and your network goes down. With Hedera, we are resilient to DDoS attacks because Hashgraph presupposes that everyone is out to DDoS you, and it has this asynchronous function. So if you attack one node, doesn't matter. If you attack two nodes, doesn't matter. Attack three nodes, it doesn't matter. There's no leader to attack. So Lehman is paranoid about security. So he wakes up in the morning thinking, how could the network be compromised? And at the same time, in order to run the world's economy, you need incredible speed. You can't have a technology that can just do 10 to 15 transactions per second. You're going to have to do millions and millions of transactions per second. So that means that you're going to have to move to a sharded future, right, where your networks are sharded. And that also brings in an additional attack vector. So you want to make sure that each shard is highly secure, high throughput, and then the whole multi-sharded network is also this property of asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance. And then if you couple that with solid governance, where no one entity has more power over the network than anyone else, I like our chances long term. I think we're going to be around for a long time.
Wonderful. And 20-minute finality at a Walgreens. If we are at this global scale, right, with micropayments, it also doesn't sound too great to be in line at that.
Right.
That's gonna be my worst.
We could send everyone an HBAR here, and you would get it in 3 to 5 seconds.
That's my worst joke of the night too. So I apologize. No more from me from that respect. Okay. We also, so one trend that we've seen a lot more is interoperability between smart contract ecosystems. When we talk about mass adoption and onboarding new people into crypto, how does Hedera position itself in this multi-chain ecosystem?
Yeah, so I do think we're in a multi-chain future for a while. Hedera will win eventually, but in order to win, you need to interoperate. So bridges are super important, right? We're trying to get away from the Web 2 world where you're locked into something. That's just not cool. So if you minted your token on a different network, and maybe that network's having challenges, or you like the ecosystem over here, you want to be able to bridge your application and your token over to a different network. We have to all work together. That's one of the reasons I love Chainlink so much, is that you just have this vision of multi-chain. You support as many as possible, technically, obviously, resource constrained, but you kind of get it that you're not trying to pick winners in the market. You're just saying, we're going to make everything work together. And that's cool. It's essential. It is one of the building blocks of this new world that we're in.
And then let's go more into Hedera and how you guys are set up as an organization. You have programs such as the HBAR Foundation and Launchpad Luna to help kickstart dApps and ideas. What would you like to see come out of these initiatives?
Yeah, so because of our governing council model, we really started in the enterprise. And there are enterprises building on Hedera. They're going to come to market. They take a long time. They're going to do some cool stuff. But our market is moving at light speed, right? The innovation is happening with small startups, entrepreneurs with amazing ideas, thinking about how can I use this technology. Were we talking about NFTs 3 years ago?
I was not. And that's part of the, well, go on.
Definitely not me. Right? But last year, boom.
It's all I can talk about, and my girlfriend would like me to stop talking about it.
Who this time last year was in a DAO? One guy in a DAO. So
well done, sir.
Right? By the end of the year, we'll all be in a DAO. I don't doubt it.
That's a very good joke.
Terrible.
Give it up, ladies and gentlemen. You can drop the mic right now.
So we're moving so fast. So how do you turbocharge the whole economy on Hedera? We are fortunate. We have a very large treasury. And last year, the governing council voted to set aside a large portion of treasury for ecosystem development. And they voted to set up the HBAR Foundation and give 2.5 billion HBARs to them to provide grants. So if you have a great idea, if you have an existing application on a different protocol, or you're looking for a new protocol, whatever it is, you can apply to the HBAR Foundation, and no guarantees, but they want to help you. They want to fund you. And it's like the best model in the world because you don't give up any equity, right? So that's kind of crazy. But through this approach, are they going to pick winners all the time? Absolutely not. But are they going to place a ton of bets? And from that, we're going to get the next big thing? Absolutely.
Yeah, and it plays back to your 100-year thesis, right? Like we need to make sure that we're setting up now and deploying where we need to be, and also having the network effect of all this growth within these ecosystems. So for the builders in the crowd or users or people who are completely new to the space, how can someone in the community get involved with Hedera?
Yeah, so if you are a builder, we currently have a hackathon going on. It ends May 16th, so it's still got 3 weeks left. Over $500,000 in prizes. You can go to hedera.com/h22. Easy URL, hedera.com/h22. And, but if you don't want to do that, we have this developer portal. Go to hedera.com, set up a testnet account. We give you some dummy HBARs to do that. We have SDKs in multiple languages. We have open source demos in our GitHub repo that you can just take and play around. If you're a full stack, JavaScript developer or Go developer, you can be up and running in minutes. It is very easy to develop on Hedera.
And one more time for that URL, please.
Hedera.com/h22.
Wonderful. And thank you. Those are all the questions that I have prepared, but I would like to turn it over to the audience if we do have time.
Absolutely.
And you have a 7:30 out given your parking
My
restriction.
car will be locked in the parking garage at 7:30. Yeah. And it's 3 minutes away. So
With finality, they're going to
that is right.
secure you in.
That is right.
All right. So please, if anyone has any questions, yes, sir, in the back, our DAO member. We'll give you one moment. We have a microphone coming back here.
Sorry, we had to go to a big data thing with Slack and Eventbrite to help them get their data right for events. Literally. What do you see as your big vision? If you already said this, sorry in advance. And what do you think the biggest pain point in your WAG that you don't know how you're going to get to, and that you're focused either with the investment fund, and could you say the actual URL again louder because I missed hearing it? And also, what is the thing?
Hedera.com/h22.
And what is your big piece that you feel like you need to incentivize 1,000 Blooms to do? And what's the technical challenge or the market challenge like that you feel like you really nobody's got yet? And that may be a big question. It may have been talked about, but I just want to get a feel for that, if you don't mind me asking.
Those were great questions.
I think, yeah.
Let me take, I'm going to take the challenge question first. So the biggest challenge is, if you look at our overall industry today, Ethereum has the best tooling, it has the largest number of developers, and everyone hates paying, high gas fees, but you'll do it because that's where your on-ramps are, you've got all of the support you need. So for a newer network to gain traction, it isn't just having amazing technology and governance and those aspects. You also need the ecosystem around it. Like if you want to mint a token, you should be comfortable knowing that your token can be listed on an exchange. Well, today that's ERC20, right? If you have an ERC20, your odds of getting listed on an exchange go up a ton. Yeah, low gas fees do help, but if the exchanges aren't supporting your tokens, then that's a barrier to entry. And if you look around the ecosystem, there's custodians in addition that you want, that knowledge that you're going to be supported. We don't yet have Chainlink integration, right? You want to make sure that you have oracles so you can build what you need to build and get your external data feeds and all of that. So that is probably the biggest challenge, but that is why I'm the most optimistic with the HBAR Foundation, is they have the capital to go get those integrations, right? If you're looking down a list of ledgers to integrate with, and one is going to, pay you to go integrate with them, you're going to go up the queue. So we will solve that one and get that.
CELO and others have become global payment providers. CELO.org actually got $500 million in its reserve, and they've done 100 million payments, cutting money transfer rules. If which is really not hard for a company your scale to get approved. They did integration with Safaricom, and in South America with the SMS providers on like flip phones aren't even smart.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an easy way to get the hardest problem most blockchain companies can't do, which is customers so they can pay out. Because the cool thing people forget is mobile minutes is the universal currency. People in parts of the world walk up with commodities like plants and meat and stuff, gold, and go to a store. And they put those minutes on their cell phone and they transfer across countries around the world because the mobile networks, even in China, pay each other back for roaming in minutes. So since you just cool with it, I just gave you it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. Thank you.
If you'd like to build that, I do think the HBAR Foundation can.
Yeah, they would.
Thank you for that question. Thank you.
And then I'll just take another one of your questions, which is, for the industry as a whole, I think the challenge is we have a lot of cool things to play around with now, but there hasn't yet been that killer app that you live in, day out, like you do with your Web 2 apps. And we're still, I don't know what it's going to be, but we're waiting for it still. And so there's a massive opportunity.
Hi, thank you for sharing. Hello, my name is Suki. My biggest question is I want to start my own company. I was previously at Pantera being quantitative researcher. Recently, I left to join an NFT startup, but my goal is really to start my own company. So my question is, my background is technical, but not a software engineer. So I'm possibly, looking for a technical co-founder. But what I'm really wanting to hear your advice is, how do I find this great, thing that I can work on for the next 5 to 10 years? There's layer 1s, there's layer 2s, there's trading, NFTs, and all of that. So really my question is how do I find what are the things that I want to work on, and where do I find, my technical co-founder?
I mean, if I could answer what the, what the billion-dollar app was, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. But what I would say is, in our space today, we are community-driven, right? You're all here, and when you just get into a community, you hear amazing ideas. In our hackathon, the groups there are talking about amazing ideas. And so that's where the innovation is going to come from. I think the best ideas that have the highest degree of success are those that actually solve a pain for someone. So the app that makes it possible for me to sign into any website without having to give basically my DNA, everything about me, that real decentralized identity challenge, that's going to be integrated by everyone, right? That's so fundamental to our space, because our space is about taking back control over our data, having the ability to monetize our data. So that's where I think the huge growth is going to come from. And I think it's why we're not yet seeing mass adoption, because no one's really cracked it. And then as far as finding technical, I would say join not our hackathon necessarily, but any hackathon, because there are people in the technical community that are like, oh man, I can code all day long, but I don't have that business sense. It doesn't appeal to me. I don't want to do it. So teaming up is often just an easier thing than you would expect.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. And for everyone here that's technical and want to start a company, feel free to come talk to me.
Go talk to Suki. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Focus and initiative, for sure. Further questions?
When you think of Hedera's focus on enterprise adoption, and you look at the history of things like Hyperledger Fabric, Corda, and Quorum that have failed to really gain very much enterprise adoption, what do you think Hedera's edge is long term that will, really kind of drive the next generation of enterprises using DLT?
Yeah, so I think very similar to the cloud adoption that we've seen over the last 10, 15 years, with everything happens faster in blockchain industry. But what we saw was enterprises, especially early on, so back in like 2016 through 2020, were looking at R3 Corda and were looking at Hyperledger Fabric and building what turned out to be like proofs of concept on there. But if you're just recreating your private centralized world now with a private consortium, with a private network, you're not really decentralized. Like, you're not really solving that fundamental trust problem. Like, why would you trust a private network over a centralized database? You haven't really shifted that. So we're seeing this move much quicker than it happened in cloud, where it was private cloud to then public cloud. We're seeing private ledgers to public ledgers. So there are applications being built today on Hedera and deployed today that 5 years ago would have been in a private network. So Avery Dennison is the world's largest label maker. If ever you got, back in the day, a CD label, it was Avery Dennison. If you have an RFID tag today, it's Avery Dennison. So whereas they may have built their supply chain track and trace system on a private ledger a few years ago, now they're building that on a public ledger, which is Hedera. And I think we're going to see, just acceleration there.
And Kevin, can I get a time
I worked
check
on
as well?
Corda back in the day, and it was not a very user-friendly or easy to build on framework. So wishing you guys the best on that.
We have time for about 2 more questions. It's 7:17. Maybe one more. Let's wrap with one.
Let's do them. Yeah, do them fast,
Okay.
if we have them.
Lightning round. Who's got a question?
Right.
Maybe not. Kevin, can we do our selfie and then we can wrap this up? Thank you guys once
Yeah.
again, and please give it up for our student
Yeah,
guests.
thank you for having me. Thank you, Andrew.